This conference will now be recorded.
Don't put my phone next to me. Press mute when I'm ready.
Do I have to hit talk first and then hit mute?
Aren't you on?
All right, we're gonna have some fun here tonight. I feel like we need to have some music going on or something. For those of you who are joining up, we're gonna get started in just a second here. Wait for people to log on. If everyone could mute themselves, that'd be awesome. All right, gang, it's 7 o'clock. I say we get this party started. So here we go. Welcome everybody to the first edition of our case study night when it's all virtual. In case you guys haven't heard, there's a bug going around and we can't meet in person, and it's kind of wreaking havoc all across the land. And so what we're doing here tonight is we're adapting and changing, and very excited to do this for this first time. I got to tell you, it's a lot easier to put on an SSIC meeting when you don't have to get the sound out and you don't have to order all the pizzas and get all the beer and do all the printing and do all the registration and everything. It's a lot easier to do it like this. So, but we don't get to see each other in person, which is a lot of the fun of what SSIC does is connecting other people and making solid relationships in the real estate world, and sharing deals and sharing tips, contractors, all that kind of stuff. So in lieu of doing that tonight, we're just going to go ahead and just jump right in with what the agenda is. And we got some cool stuff in store for you guys. So I'm really excited that you're here. I'm excited that people are engaged and want to be in the know of what's happening in real estate, the investing world here in St. Louis, and real estate in general here in St. Louis, because there's some interesting times, and uncertainty is definitely what's in the air right now. However, hopefully what we can share with some of you folks here tonight is some things that we can be doing right now in our business that can prepare ourselves and take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be coming down the pike. And I'm excited to get going. So we do have a guest speaker here tonight. Hakeem is going to be joining us a little bit later, and see if I can advance my screen here. There we go. Okay, so this is what we would normally say. I don't know if the screen's keeping up. There we go. Now turn your ringer to stun or to vibrate and put your phone away. But if you could just mute yourself, that would be the best. And if we could ever figure out a way to mute people at our live meetings, that'd be really cool. But all right. Anyway, here we go. We are going to encourage you guys to ask questions here today because we got a lot of really cool stuff to cover. And so if you could definitely, if you want to ask a question to Hakeem, myself, or Craig, or any of the other people that are going to be chiming in, absolutely. We're going to be monitoring the chat box, and we'll certainly get to your questions that we possibly can here tonight. We're going to take a quick poll, okay? Since we're changing the format at SSIC slightly or dramatically to online only, we want to know what you need to learn and what you want to learn about right now. Our next meeting is going to be based upon your poll here. So just a quick poll. If you want to put this in the comment section, choose a letter and place it in the chat, or write your idea in the chat box. Professional guest speaker. B is panel of experts. C is recent case studies, rehabs, wholesale deals. D is market stats. E is marketing tips. F is how to successfully run a rehab project, or write your own idea in. So A, B, C, D, or F. And if you have more than one, definitely put those in as well. Okay, so might want to run this poll here in a few minutes as well as more people are logging in. But right now, what we're doing is, what do you want to know at our next monthly meeting? And we will absolutely prepare this. A, professional guest speaker. B, panel of experts. C, recent case studies. D, market stats. E, marketing tips. F, how to run a successful rehab. Write your idea in the check box or in the chat box if you have something else that we would like to cover. You would like us to cover. We'll certainly do that. I know a lot of people around the country in the real estate investing world, and I'd be happy to have other people outside of St. Louis jump on the call and let us know what it is. So absolutely, guys, that's the poll. And I might put this up here in a little bit as more people are logging on. But thank you for being here. Okay, our motto is, it's not about the money, it's about the freedom. And that's what we're here to talk about here today. Our mission statement is to be the leading group of local real estate investors, helping local individuals who aspire to achieve their freedom investing lifestyle. And that's something that we're passionate about at SSIC. That's what we do on a daily basis, is try to fulfill this mission, to be the leading group of local real estate investors, helping people here in St. Louis that want to invest in real estate. That is our mission statement, and how we do it is by sharing strategies, tools, and resources that we use, and showing people how to be successful, well-rounded investors. We've talked about this a lot in the past, about what it means to be a well-rounded investor, and now more than ever, this is paramount to people having success in this business, is not being a one-trick pony and understanding how to navigate through what's going on, and have multiple streams of income, and being able to put transactions together, buy houses cheap, fix them up, either rent them out or resell them or sell them off to other investors. Knowing how to do all facets of this business is a well-rounded investor. And now more than ever, with these uncertain times, is the people that are going to win and win big are the people that are in it to win it, and are well-rounded investors that understand how to put a deal together, what is a good deal, how to recognize a good deal, how to capitalize on that, and take advantage of the opportunities set before them. So I want to get to my buddy Craig here, and we're going to go over some stuff here that's sorry, I'm having a hard time talking and clicking at the same time. There we go. Now let me find Craig here. Craig Smith now is on, and I'm going to make him the presenter here. You know what, Craig? You now have control. You now have control. So,
All right, let's
all right.
thumbs up.
So, okay, you got control, right? There you go.
Yep.
And I can see your screen. Very cool. All right, so check
See
it
it
out.
already?
So I asked Craig to be on the call here tonight so that we could talk about some market updates. And I got to tell you, I probably talk to Craig once a day, if not twice a day, and maybe even more via text. I mean, we talk all the time about stuff that's going on. And I'm off in my little compound here at Homeschool Central, which is, by the way, where we're holding the SSIC meeting here tonight. I'm homeschooling my little kiddos in the basement. And I'm in my little compound, and I'm reading all the news articles and everything, and the world is burning out there. I mean, oh my gosh, there's fear and pandemonia. And if you weren't connected into a group like this, or you weren't connected into other investors, you'd think that the real estate market was like no one's buying houses, no one's leaving their houses, everyone stopped paying their mortgages, and everyone's stopped paying rent, and there's going to be mass hysteria. And and then when I get done talking with Craig, he's just like, "Man, brother, you got to be in the POZ zone, positive only zone. What are you doing? You're not in the positive only zone." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right." And then we go over the numbers, and man, the real estate market is still chugging along here in St. Louis, guys. It's actually, to be honest, I'm pretty proud of what's happening in the St. Louis real estate market. Houses are listed, houses are being sold, and the people are adapting. We can do virtual things, the virtual tours and virtual showings, and there, the lead up into this, there was a huge demand for housing and a huge shortage of a supply, and so that's what we've seen for the last couple years. And it is still continuing to be that trend right now. And so I'm going to give this over to Craig really quick so we can talk about a little bit about what he's seeing and some of the conversations that we're having on a daily basis about what's happening in the St. Louis market. So Craig, welcome to the call. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Real good. I just want to point out that this is normally your job, and you called me yesterday and kindly handed off the torch in the midst of the biggest meltdown that we've seen ever. So I'm gonna do it justice, but yeah, let's just lay that out there.
All right,
So
fair enough. Fair enough.
so diving into it, I start this off with saying that we're going to look at some data here, but like we don't have data for the current situation that we're in, right? Like even up till now, we've got data up through pretty much the end of March, but we don't have anything in April. And I know, and you guys know that April is going to be drastically different than what we went through in January, February, and March of this year. And even as we compare it back to January, February, March of 2019, it's all different. So really what we're kind of doing here is I'm doing a little bit of speculation, but it's based off of data and it's based off of my thought process of what I think is going to come down the pipe, and listening to other guys that are in the business, that have been in the business, that have downturns and have experienced some of this stuff. So we're interpreting this data as we find it and as we come across it. So really right now, kind of this is everybody, right? This is how we're feeling. The world's on fire. Everybody's hoarding their toilet paper. So the big question right now is really, should we panic? Should we be panicking right now? And my thought process, and talking with my partner and really looking at data and talking with other guys, is no, at least not yet. Like I don't see any reason for panic in the immediate right now. And we'll dive into the data and kind of talk about why that is. But just so you guys know, as professional real estate investors, what am I really looking at? Like, what am I paying attention to on the day-to-day in my business? And these, for your information, these are the kind of the 4 key things that we're looking at right now, right? And Nick hit on one of them. One of them is inventory. Really, inventory is at a historic low. We haven't had inventory this low, and I'd certainly not in my lifetime, and I can't remember the last time we did. Interest rates, mortgage availability, we'll talk about that. That's something that we keep an eye on closely. That ties very closely to people's ability to be able to buy homes, what makes a home affordable for them. Employment, we all hear the news. We're all aware that employment nationally is unprecedented. We're losing more jobs by the day than we ever have in the past. So that's something that we're keeping an eye on. More specifically, I want to know what my unemployment is regionally, because my business is in St. Louis. So I want to know how we're impacted here. We haven't really been able to dive into the data fully because that data is not available yet. So as we progress through the next coming months, we're going to be paying attention to that stuff. And it's one of those where we're watching and seeing, okay, what industries are really affected. We know who's affected and who those temporary layoffs and furloughs are, but we want to know that specifically and how it affects us and our business. And then economics, really specifically consumer confidence, because for us, the quicker that we can roll out of this slump and this recession that we're in, and I think it's very safe to call this a recession. Let's call it what it is. This is a recession. Make no two ways about it. We are in a recession. So how quickly can we push through this recession and get people back into jobs and get it to a point where people are out there, that confidence is returned. We're out doing the normal day-to-day stuff, which includes getting out and looking at houses and buying houses. So really what we'll talk about here, see if this will advance for me. There we go. And then specifically what affects my business. So we talked about the stuff that I'm watching, but really what does it come down to, and how is that going to affect my business? What are the main things that are going to cause me to lose money, or going to cause me issue and prevent me from doing more business? Really the main thing for us right now is the falling of prices. So the falling of home prices or the falling of rental rates. Now I'm fairly confident that our rental rates are going to stay pretty close to where they're at. I don't see my rent rates falling drastically over the next 2, 3, 6 months. I don't see, personally, and we'll get into this, I don't see housing prices falling, and we'll talk about that a little bit. What I do think might change a little bit later on, it might take a little bit more time to sell properties. However, I think as we roll out of this, you're going to see some pent up demand, and you're going to see houses moving very quickly, strictly because of supply and demand. The other thing that's out there is cost of money. What is it going to cost me to do business in the future? What are my interest rates? What are my holding costs going to look like 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year from now? I can tell you that we just locked up a loan for a rehab that we're going to do that we're taking down tomorrow, and it's $330,000 of construction and purchase money, and we got that at 4.2% from a local bank. That's incredible. That's an investor loan at 4.2%. That's stupid low. That's the lowest that it's ever been. I don't expect it to stay there. I expect it to go up or down slightly. I don't expect it to jump to 8, 10, 12%, but I know that's going to fluctuate. And then the cost of production and the cost of material are the things that we keep an eye on also. So we talk a lot about supply and demand, and we all kind of know the rules of supply and demand, right? Obviously, low supply, high demand equals high pricing. High supply, low demand is going to equal low pricing and whatnot. But really, how does that relate to real estate, and how does that affect the actual cost and the pricing of housing? And I found this graph online, and I thought it was very good. It's kind of a good visual of what goes into the complications and how that affects housing prices. So if we look on the supply side and the demand side, really supply side, we know that we're at record lows. So let's take a quick look at, and I'm going to escape out of here and jump over to some graphs, some more data for you, because I'm a data kind of guy, and really we want to know where we're at and how things are shaking out. What this is all MLS data, guys. So what we're looking at here is data over the past 3 years, and specifically this one is inventory. So right now we're looking at March 2020, and it's broken down on this chart by county. So St. Louis County, St. Louis City, and then also St. Charles County. Those are the 3 kind of big metro areas that we deal with most. And that's the 3 that I've included for you guys. So looking at this March 2020, and we'll just focus on St. Louis County just for time's sake, 1.8 months of inventory right now. Now, if we jump back and we compare that a year ago to March of 2019, 2.3 months. So we know that right now we're at a low inventory point. And we're even lower than March of 2019, which was an excellent selling year for us. I fully suspect that as we move into April, this number, that 1.8 months of inventory, I would not be surprised if that got cut in half. just because of the fact that right now, houses that are going under contract are outpacing the houses that are coming onto the market. So that right there tells you that we're going into a deficit of housing on the inventory. And really, why is that? That's because people are realizing what's going on. More people are staying at home, and more people don't want to open up their house to people coming in to see it. So as we move in and we have a lower inventory, we're going to get into that supply and demand again, right? That low supply, high demand is going to at least prop up prices. So I don't expect in the near future to see our housing pricing going down. And we'll talk about some other factors with that coming up. We can quickly look at new listings coming onto the market. So back in March, St. Louis County, right now, 2020, in March, 1430. Back in March 2019, 1510. So again, we're lower than we were at this point last year. Now, it'll be very interesting, like I said, to see where we shake out in April. Again, I fully expect this number to be way lower than 1430 for April. I don't know exactly where it's going to be at, but I expect it to be lower. So that takes care of the supply side of this chain. So kind of moving up, let's move off of the supply side and move on to more of the demand items. It's what creates that demand for people that are going to come out and want to buy the houses that you get done rehabbing or those rentals that you put out. Kind of the first one we'll talk about here is the big white elephant, the big gorilla in the room is economic growth. Right now, there's no arguing that the economy is in the tank. The stock market has dropped more than it ever has, and we have more unemployment than we ever have. The question that I have is how long will it take to rebound? And again, it gets back to that consumer confidence. How quickly will people get back out there and start spending money again? And how quickly will they say, okay, I'm in a position where I do want to go out and buy houses? Even more specifically, locally, I'm looking at that locally. Our situation, without a doubt, is completely different than Florida's and completely different than Hawaii's. Hawaii, I think I just read a statistic, they lost $17 billion of revenue because of nobody going and traveling there. But completely separate of their economy, it gets down to employment and workers, right? The majority of the people in those states and those areas, they're employed in jobs that are directly impacted by people coming and spending money there. That's a tourism state. St. Louis, for all its greatness and all its faults, we're not a tourism state. That's not what props up our economy, thankfully. So I would suspect that once things get past the quarantine stage, we're going to have people that are getting back to work. What we don't know right now is what is that number going to be and how quickly are they going to get back to work?
No, we don't.
So moving on from there, interest rates. I know Frank's on the call. I tied into Frank earlier today just to get an idea of where we're at because I know there's a lot out there. This, as somebody who rehabs and sells houses, is incredibly important to me. I want to know that people are going to be able to get loans and they're going to be able to get loans at a good rate so that they can come out and buy our houses when we're done with them. And the cheaper that those loans are, the cheaper the money that they can get means the more house that they can buy and the more that I could potentially sell them that house for. So let's dive in here real quick, and I'm going to use this email that Frank sent me just kind of as a guideline. So there's been some conversation out there right now that people are having issues getting loans and that VA and FHA and USDA, they just can't get loans. That's not really the case of what's happening. What's happening is you need to find the right lender. You need to find a Frank with Yield Mortgage who knows what's going on and he knows how to put those loans in place. Those loans can still be done. There's no two ways about it. Those loans can still be done and they are still being done. So when I'm a rehabber and I'm going through and I'm getting ready to sell my house and I get that pre-approval letter with a contract, I am looking twice, 3 times, 4 times as hard now than I was 4 months ago at who that pre-approval is with. I'm calling that lender and making sure that buyer is still good. I'm making sure that their pre-approval is still good on a day-by-day basis because people are losing jobs by the day. I need to know that this guy still has a job and he's still going to qualify. So with that said, where rates are at right now, So we'll just quickly go through here. Conventional 30-year, 3.25. Conventional 30-year, 250, 20% down. These are all with good credit scores, guys. 3.375. These are historical lows also. I would point that out. This is mid to 3.4s. This is not normal. You look back 20, 30 years, I mean, your average would probably be 6 or 7%. So we are still at a point where loans for housing is dirt cheap historically. VA 30-year, they're still being done 3%, 3.5%. Non-owner occupied investment purchase. So if you own less than 10 houses and you want to go out and you want to buy a single family or a 2 to 4 family, and you're putting 20 or 25% down and you got good credit, you're seeing 4.875 on both of those with a point down to buy the rate down. What has happened is that jumbo loans have pretty much not gone away, but they've gotten extremely difficult. So anytime you have a jumbo loan, a loan amount that's over this $510,000, basically they're getting to a point where they need to be very creative, and they can only be creative up to $710,000. This is at a point right now where if I'm looking at rehabbing a house or doing new construction or building, I'm probably going to stray away completely from a house that is in that $750,000 to $800,000 and above price point. I personally don't typically do any rehabs in that price point or new construction in that price point anyways. But if that has been your business and that's what you're looking at doing, understand that you may have issues moving that house on the back end when you're done because of this. And the reason for that isn't because these people can't traditionally qualify. It's on the back end, it's on the servicing side that these lenders, that the Franks need to sell the loans to. So that's a quick nugget. I've always strayed away from that side. I would stray away from doing any rehabs or any construction in the very short term, at least until we see how that shakes out. State bond programs, those are effectively shut down. So your MHDC, your first place home loans, your non-qualifying mortgage loans, so anything outside of that Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie Mae lending area, those are all pretty much shut down for the short term until they get things figured out. So that takes care of the interest rate side. So interest rates, there are some difficulties there. However, people are still able to get a loan. People are still buying houses. Rates are still historically low. And remember, we're talking about supply and demand here. Number of households, we talked about inventory. Inventory is extremely low. Availability of mortgages, people can still get mortgages. We just hit on that. Affordability of housing on the demand side. St. Louis is one of the most affordable in the nation from a housing standpoint. You get more house for your money here in St. Louis than you do in 90 to 95% of the other cities, the other large cities within the country. So affordability within St. Louis is not an issue. Speculative demand. So when I see speculative demand, I think this is something that's going to come into play probably in the next 2, 3, 6 months. Here's where I see speculative demand. Right now, you have a lot of investors, and I'm talking big investors, hedge funds, those guys who have been putting money out there, and they're trying to find a spot to put money where it's going to be secure, and they're going to be able to make a return on it. Everything that they've had in the market, nearly everything, has just taken a massive loss. Those guys are all going to be licking their wounds, and they're going to be looking at what's out there, and they're going to start circling back to all of these rental properties in areas like St. Louis and Ohio and in the Midwest and say, wow, those really didn't get hit at all on their value. Rent rates didn't go down, property values didn't go down, and guess what? Maybe there are some people who can't afford to live in those houses anymore, and so due to foreclosure or divorce from being stuck at home and being quarantined, we have opportunity to go in and buy them. Those guys are going to start coming in and they're going to look at this and they're going to start picking them up. We had that a little while ago. I think they will probably start to pick up again. All of that is going to prop up housing pricing, in my personal opinion, in the near term. I'm talking from here to 6, 9 months out. Let's see here. So on the supply side, new builds, we know that there's not enough new construction being built. They can't build it at a price point cheap enough to create an oversupply for the amount of demand that we have. Number of households. So right here, this guy, number of households. What that's referring to is population increase, right? As we all continue to have more kids, and in a certain area, depending on state by state, are people coming into the state or people exiting the state? St. Louis, by and large, has been fairly stable and slowly increased. So right now, number of households will slowly increase for us. So the number of people who want houses and need a place to live is going to increase. All of that, in my opinion, is going to hold housing pricing up. Let me slide this back over so I can see what I'm doing here. All right, so just a quick recap here on where we are at and where I'm personally at with our business. My recommendation for you guys, if you're looking to continue working through this downturn, is focus your efforts on the meat of the market. So stay within that $135,000 to $300,000 price mark. As we look through St. Louis City and St. Louis County, and we go into sales price medians. So if you look right here, St. Louis County average 268, St. Louis City average 189, St. Charles County average 286. I will say that if you look at St. Louis County, where it's at that 268, that average will probably drop over the next 6 months to a year. Why do I say that average is going to drop? Because those jumbo loans are going away, and those expensive houses that are propping up prices, because these are all averaged together, right? All of those are going to start to go away, or at least there's going to be less of them. That's going to lead to this average dropping. So when you look at this data 3 months, 6 months from now, and you see that average price is maybe decreased, understand that it's maybe not because housing has lost value, especially when you compare it coast to coast. When you get out into those areas of California and New York, those really expensive housing areas, as those averages start to come down or level off, understand that may be part of the reason why. So you might have to dig a little bit deeper into your data and say, okay, well, what is happening in that $125,000 to $300,000 price point that Craig was talking about? And I think if you isolate in on that data and you throw those outliers out, you will probably see that we're going to stay stable or potentially likely even increase. Track your inventory and your days on market. I fully suspect that as we move on and we get through this, there's going to be a lot of pent up demand. Right now, there's a whole lot of people sitting at home, furloughed or working from home, that have nothing to do but sit in front of their computer or their iPad and scroll through Zillow and look at the houses that they want to buy, that they're not able to get out there and see. You've got a lot of people who would like to buy a house, but they're hesitant. You've got inventory that's low. So I fully suspect that inventory and days on market is going to decrease, especially the days on market, even as inventory increases. So let's say we roll out of this and people decide to get moving again and our inventory back up. You're still going to have a lot of people that are looking for houses. So your houses sold is going to increase, your days on market are going to decrease. So we're going to be tracking this and actively looking at those. Track your interest rate and your loan products. Know where your interest rates are at. Are they staying consistent? Are they going up slightly? I don't mind. I don't think an increase in a half point or a point and a half is going to hurt us tremendously. But if interest rates start going to 6, 8, 9% for some reason, that's going to have impact on us, on the amount of house that people can afford to buy. Watch the loan products. Like Frank said, that jumbo loan market, that's pretty much gone. So I know that I don't want to go fishing for a rehab in that market. Keep an eye on your other loan products, see which ones are strong, see which ones are still performing. Watch regional employment and employment demographics. Understand what areas, and even more specifically, what areas of St. Louis are getting hit the hardest. So know where our unemployment is at. Know what price points that unemployment sector is going to hit hardest. Is that a first-time home buyer market? Is that blue collar? What areas are getting hit hardest, and who's going to be impacted by that? What housing product are those people looking for? Do your proper due diligence on buyers and their lender. we can't hit home on that one enough. Like Frank said, there's a lot of misinformation out there right now on who can do loans and who can't do loans and what's available. So more than ever, if you get done with a rehab and you get a buyer or 2 or 3 buyers coming across, make sure that you're looking at those pre-approvals and you're calling those lenders and you're actually talking to them and making sure that they have the ability to close. And one of the last things I would leave you with, kind of just a quick nugget here, is watch your reserves, your personal reserves and your business reserves, and make sure that you remain bankable. None of this matters if we roll into the next 2 or 3 or 4 months and you're at a position where you can't get money and you can't buy houses. You might end up in a position where you have to wholesale, and that's great. But if by and large, all of us are in a position where we can't buy the houses and we're back in a 2008, 2009, that's not going to help. So the best thing you can do for yourself and your business right now is watch your reserves, make sure that you can be as liquid as possible, and put yourself in a position where you're still going to be able to get money to go out and buy houses. Cool. With that, we can open it up to a couple questions if we need to. Nick, do you have anything, or otherwise we can roll right into the next guy?
Yeah, I'm just gonna add something. If you do have a question, type it in there, and we'll get to it at the end. But I want to roll this along. And when I called you and asked you if you would be willing to or interested in doing this, I didn't realize you're going to be this detailed in it. So I really appreciate you doing this, because this is normally what I do. You're right. And maybe, just maybe, you should do this every month, because it appears that you're just a little bit better at it than I am.
I
But
felt that question might come, but if you need me to, I will. I can.
But check it out. To me, guys, it seems like, you know, there's a lot of good news out there for people who like bad news, right? And if we pay attention to all that stuff, oh my gosh. And I do absolutely. I am tracking as much as information as I possibly can, because I'm looking for the opportunities, right? And to me, it seems like about 3 weeks ago, America was in this big jumbo 747 airplane, and we all jumped off, and we were told that our parachutes were going to open up at 1,000 feet, and we're falling, and we're just like, what the heck is going to happen? Because we've never had anything like this. We've never had a shelter at home order for the entire United States, basically, and people aren't going to work. My gosh, the parachute's going to open. Okay. And I'm not saying the government bailout's the answer. I'm saying we're going to get through this for sure. But as we've jumped out of the plane, we're like, oh my gosh, what's really going to happen? Is everything going to be okay? We're going to float safely down to earth and everything's going to be fine. And, when you're seeing unemployment numbers the way we are, when we're seeing the stock market being affected the way that we have, when we see, our GDP is going to be destroyed, when you see all this stuff out there, holy smokes, what does that really mean for us? And I think there's no doubt about it. There's going to be a mess to clean up. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for us. Let's just put it this way. There's going to be a lot more opportunities than there were just 3 or 4 weeks ago. And there are going to be foreclosures as a result of this. There are going to be investors that own rental property that don't want to own rental property anymore because they're freaked out. Maybe they're not plugged into a group like this and they're freaked out and they're going to want to sell. There's going to be more motivated sellers. Craig said it right. There's going to be a lot of divorces with people staying home, but there's also going to be a lot of babies born in 9 months and people are going to outgrow their house, right? So no one's got the crystal ball, but all the stuff that you said, Craig, was true stuff. We have to look locally at what's going on, and you made some very interesting connections there with supply and demand. The housing market was chugging along just fine. The economy was chugging along just fine. We were waiting for some sort of shift to happen, right? We needed to shake out some newer investors or whatever. Deals were getting tighter, deals were getting thinner, a little bit less available than they were just a couple years ago. We were waiting for some sort of shift. We weren't waiting for this for sure. But there's no doubt about it. As of just a couple weeks ago, we were thinking, oh, and we'll be back to work in no time, everything will be going. Well, there's definitely going to be a mess here. But what's cool about it is all of the good news that Craig was talking about. That's what we've been seeing that's happening. Houses are still moving, and we're going to see. I think, Craig, the biggest thing that you're talking about is supply going to be likely lower next month.
Yep.
And that's if there's still going to be buyers, there's going to be this big pent up demand. And if it takes a month, 2 months, 3 months, by summer or whatever, there's going to be a big goose egg that's going to go through this snake, that once the shelter in place order is lifted and people feel comfortable leaving their houses and we kind of get back to some normalcy in our lives, boom, we're just going to pick up right where we left off. And there is going to be some mess that's going to be cleaned up. But for most individuals that just live in a house and they want to sell it and they want to move on to the next one, it's going to be there, the opportunity, and we're going to have unreal rates, right? These are unreal rates that we're going to be experiencing. So rates, supply, and demand, it has bright futures for what we're doing. And that's the reason why we're covering so much on this tonight, guys, is because when we rehab a house, when we go ahead and sell it, we want to know that there's a market for it. And what Craig has pretty much defined for us is there's absolutely going to be a market for us. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to pull out of this. There's going to be a mess that's going to be need to be cleaned up, but that's just going to spell opportunities for us to buy houses at bigger discounts than we could a few short weeks ago, and potentially have more opportunities to be able to do that. So,
Yeah, so here's just one more quick note. Everybody asking, is this the next 2008, 2009 financial crisis and housing crisis specifically? This crisis is not a housing related issue like it was in 2008, 2009.
Right. 100%.
It's if you're going to compare it to something, it's more comparable to a 9/11, where it was an outside event, a very short-term situation. It's not housing specific. And this is just this is tying back into that months of supply. If you look back, starting at 2010, 2011, I mean, you're peaking out at months of inventory for St. Louis County at 9 and St. Charles County, completely different demographic and area back then, 10 years ago, than it is right now. But I mean, you're 9 months of inventory, and right now we're looking at 1.8, under 2. There's an incredible difference here in just supply and demand on the housing that's available for people to buy. So don't make the mistake of thinking that this is the next 2008, 2009, and I'm not going to buy and continue on with my business, because I feel that prices are going to plummet 20, 30, 40%. They're, at least in St. Louis, I just don't see it. I don't see a way that it could. Time will tell. I'm very confident that it's not going to. I'm going to continue on with my business and keep buying and purchasing and rehabbing properties. Are there things I'm doing differently? Absolutely. We're watching data kind of by the day, by the week, more than I ever have. I'm watching all of those items that we just went through that recap on, to make sure that I'm in a position to come out the back end of this and do way more than I was before.
I think you're right. You're right to compare this to 2011 instead of 2001 instead of 2008, because the housing market didn't cause this, right? And so far, what we've seen, the housing market really hasn't been affected in St. Louis to almost any degree. I think, big goose egg going through the snake. I think we're going to get past this. It's going to take a while. There's going to be a mess, and life will get back to normal. The main things nationally that we need to be looking at is how quickly do we rehire these people back on unemployment? How quickly can gross GDP get back up there? And the big looming cloud that's coming up over everyone's head is this national debt. We might be at $30 trillion by the time the government gets done with all the bailouts and everything. So there's definitely things that we need to be looking at long term, that will have an effect on the real estate market as of right now, the short term. When I mean immediate short term, next couple weeks, we just want to be cautious. Some things we can do is just make sure that we're getting a good deal. Really knowing our rehab numbers, really knowing all of our costs, adjusting those so that we can have a little bit longer hold times, just in case it takes a little bit longer to sell houses. But even in 2008, houses were still selling. Even in 2009, even in 2010, I don't think it's going to get that bad. Hopefully it doesn't get that bad. Let's pray it doesn't get that bad. But houses were still selling back in 2008. They just weren't going for a premium, and they weren't going as quickly. Okay. So I think it's correct to say that we're maybe in a 2001 kind of category, 9/11 kind of thing, where everything's going to kind of hold up for a second, and at some point we're going to get back to normal. Hopefully it's quicker than later. And Craig, thanks for the job here today. That was good. We do have one question on this. Has anyone had money being available from the government for investors? There is a paycheck protection part of the stimulus that basically things like payroll and rent and leases and mortgages and some utilities, as long as those the non-employee portion is not more than 25%. Basically, the intent is for the government to pay 2 months of your payroll. You do need to have employees for this, and you have to go to a SBA lender to be able to do this, and you need to provide a lot of documentation for your payroll that your payroll provider will be able to give you. And that was because small businesses, nail salons, restaurants, all kinds of small, all these in small strip malls and all this stuff, all the small businesses are being crushed right now with not being able to have any income because they can't open their doors. So the intent is, instead of laying people off, that the government would pay. If the government's going to tell you to stay home for 30 to 60 days or whatever, however long it's going to take, the government's going to pay that payroll for 30 to 60 days. So that's the intent. It's probably going to run out stupid quick, and they're trying to get another portion. I think it's another 150 billion or 250 billion, something like that, to get through as a second stimulus for small businesses. And that's what I know of. And I applied for it. I have employees. I applied for it, and I'm waiting to see if I'm going to be selected or not. But I would talk to your accountant. I would talk to your CPA, and talk to your payroll company and your small business lender to see if you qualify. So, hey, Craig, thanks again, man. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
And I think you just volunteered to do this every time. That's awesome. Thank you.
We'll figure something out.
Yeah. No, I seriously, I do appreciate you being here and doing that. So I'm going to take controls back really quickly, and forgive me if it's going to take me a second to do that. All right, now we're back on me, and I had an infographic from one of our members. Craig, you kind of covered it, but one of our members submitted this. Randy, who's a stud, submitted, looked at all of the listings in the entire MLS from March 1st until yesterday. And you can see it's just stayed steady. And remember, about the second week of March is when it all started to hit the fan. So as you can kind of see here, excuse me, I'm sorry about that. We've stayed pretty steady with the amount of activity that's out there. It seems like houses are actually not listing as much. They're starting to fall off a little bit. And but the number of houses sold is outpacing that. So that's just proof positive again that the real estate market so far has not been affected. The only effect we've really seen is lower rates, and that's always welcome. So I just got a couple more things to add before we get over to Hakeem. Again, I really want to thank everyone for being out here today and being on this, because you know, really appreciate your involvement, and it's our mission to help people be better investors. And this we can't help you unless you show up. So really appreciate you guys being here. Wanted to say one other thing here. While this, you know, monthly case study and speaker series is going to continue on online from for the next foreseeable future here, we still work with a lot of people one-on-one in our inner circle program. And it became very apparent to me at talking with other inner circle members, which is like the coaching arm of the Southside Investment Club, that people really do need like a different strategy and a little bit more focus than they did just a couple weeks ago, just to make sure that we can capitalize on the opportunities out there instead of being left on the sidelines. Because the whole name of the game is to buy low and to sell high, not freeze low and wish you had bought low, right? And there's definitely going to be some changes that are going to come down the pike with real estate investing. And if you need kind of like a little one-on-one session with us, I don't know if this is a clickable link on your screen. I'm going to put this in the chat screen so that if you guys are interested in having a strategy session with someone on my team, how do I send this to everybody? Here we go. Click on this link, and what this is going to do is allow you to have a strategy session with someone on my team to see how we can help you individually, one-on-one, to take advantage of what the current market situation, okay? To make sure that you've got the right lending relationships, to make sure that you've got the right marketing strategy, to make sure that you've got the right contractor and power team, and to make sure that you're looking at the right stuff on a daily basis. We'd be honored to do that for you guys, to have a one-on-one talk with someone on my team so we can figure out if there's a way that we can work together and help you in any way possible get to where you're trying to go and navigate through these uncertain times. Just go ahead and click on that link right there, and it'll take you to a page that'll allow you to sign up for a one-on-one session with me and my team, and see what we can do to help you in your business be more profitable from these uncertain times, working together like that than just on your own. So again, click that link, and we will be more than happy to have a session with you. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Let me get to the next screen here if I can. Okay, got a couple new Inner Circle members. Going to do a woot woot and a praise and a shout to Winnie and Steve Barr, Seth and Morgan Kaiser, and Tim Thorndike. They just started the process working with us, and really excited for this, folk. We got a good group of folks that are going to be rock stars here. You're going to be hearing a lot from them here in the next little while. Really have some high caliber folks. Winnie and Steve are awesome. Seth and Morgan are the younger millennials, and but they're on fire. And Tim Thorndike actually lives just 2 or 3 blocks from where we normally meet in Shrewsbury. So he normally walks to our meetings. So that's pretty cool. So, but yeah, wanted to acknowledge them for being a part of what we do on a daily basis, and very excited to see what we can help them with over the next little while. So we're get through here. I got sorry, I messed up the screen share there. So One last thing before we get to Hakeem is premium vendors and sponsors of the REI Rockstar podcast and everything that we do here at SSIC. We are a vendor-driven club, and Lawrence Hopkins with Longhorn Investments, Rebecca Meyer with Insight Title, Michael Sewell with Sewell Law, Frank Rosica with Guild Mortgage. These guys are Rockstar supporters of the club. In fact, Frank has a little giveaway. If anyone could, anyone that has a birthday, he's going to give a $100 gift card away to the person who has the birthday closest to today's date. So if it was a couple days ago or in a couple days or today's date, if your birthday is today or a couple days ago or in a couple days from now, type your birth date into the chat message, and a $100 gift card will be coming your way. Frank will hook up with you. We'll connect you guys. Yeah, Frank does a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Thank you so much. Michael Sewell does a lot of stuff behind the scenes with Sewell Law. If you guys are looking for a great law firm, for sure, he's awesome. If you're looking for a great title company, Rebecca Meyer is the gal to go to for sure. And Lawrence Hopkins with Longhorn Investments for hard money loans. He is your man. So I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, we had a little bit of issue with some feedback there. These guys are what makes the club work, and I really appreciate their support. Whenever possible, reach out to them. They can add value to what you're doing in your current business. They're awesome at what they do. We also have a couple other preferred vendors that also do a lot of work behind the scenes that give great pricing for what we do. Matt Edwards with Complete Drywall, Advanced Dave Kasanke, they do mold and fire and water restoration. And they do really good work. And they're awesome at what they do. I would highly recommend giving Dave a call at Advanced Clean. He's a stellar guy and has an incredible business and an incredible team. Barch Roofing, Jared Dallas does great roofs, and John Morgan Premium Cabinets. They do a lot of my rehabs, a lot of our inner circle member rehabs. They got a great cabinet, investor grade for the investor that's durable, that's good, that's affordable, and gives good pricing out. So give them a call. Any one of these guys, give them a call. And for our full vendor list, guys, make sure that you go to SSIC Online. That's where we house all of our vendors that are sponsors and supporters of the club. Reach out to that whenever possible, because they've made the effort to want to be in front of you. They want to reach out to the investor community and be a part of what we're doing, and help you in your transactions and help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. These guys are really awesome at what they do, so make sure that you do. Oh, we got a couple birthdays tomorrow. Happy birthday, Sandra. James and Dana are April 13th. Cool, we got some birthdays. Looks like Sandra K is going to get it. So very, very cool. So Frank will reach out to you. Frank, again, is with Guild Mortgage. He's got great rates. He is doing loans right now, and more than ever, guys, you need to have a good lender, a good mortgage lender on your side, and Frank is definitely the guy to do that. So, all right, very good. So we now are going to get over to the man of the hour, Mr. Hakeem, and let me find you from the list here so that I can unmute you and get you presenter here. Oh my gosh, there's so many people. I can't find you. Is Hakeem still here? Oh, there he is.
I'm here. What's going on, Nick?
All right, let me. Oh my gosh, I just lost you. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How you doing, man? This is an awesome setup you guys got here. It's awesome you guys have pivoted to the online platform.
Yeah, man, you gotta adapt, right? So I just made you presenter, and so you dabbled in the NFL for a little while, and then you had a life-changing event. You went to Haiti and got mugged at gunpoint. What the heck? What happened,
Yeah.
man?
That was a wild experience on its own. That was essentially we were I just graduated college, just got my undergrad. This is May of 2015. And we went on a missionary trip to give out medicine to different churches and orphanages across the country. And while we were there, it was 2:30 in the morning and we were playing the card game Spades, and 8 armed bandits shot through the front door. I got shot at point blank range. We got hog tied, so hands tied behind our back, feet tied at our ankles, and then hands tied to our feet and blindfolded. And essentially they went room to room, stole everything. Pissed myself, didn't even realize it. Came to peace with the fact that I was going to die, and honestly credit everything that I do now today, making it to the NFL, to overcoming that traumatic experience.
Wow, man. That's incredible. I'm very fortunate to never have had any experience like that whatsoever. I was in a horrific car accident outside of LA one time, where in a former life I was in a rock and roll band, and we were traveling from San Francisco to LA, and we were on the 5, and we had a front tire blowout, and the guy driving lost control, and we spun around about 6 or 7 times and wound up on an embankment. And we had a blind drummer at the time, and we all jump out and get out of the van, and we went to the side of the road, but he jumped out and ran in the middle of the highway because he couldn't see which way it was going. I had to run after and get him. Oh, I felt so bad, but that's about the closest near-death experience that I ever had. But crazy,
Puts
man.
things
So
in
you bought
perspective.
so you bought some real estate along the way, and you reached out to us and wanted to share some experiences and what you do and how you do it. And we said, absolutely, man, let's have you on. A little bit change of pace here for our new platform here. So talk about how you started getting into real estate and what you've been doing and what you want to share with us tonight.
Absolutely. So first of all, appreciate you for having me come on not on the show, but to
On the
your
show? Yeah,
the
this is the
online
show, brother.
virtual platform. This is the show, right? And
Yeah.
Craig, that was an awesome presentation on just the current state of the market, because that is super, super data driven, is exactly what I think everyone needs right now, versus emotional opinions like we're seeing from
Right.
a lot of people right now. But yeah, a little bit about myself. My name's Hakeem, from New Jersey. Always have prided myself as just an entrepreneur. Growing up, when I was in 5th grade, I had my own landscaping company. When I got to middle school, I used to go to school with 2 backpacks on, one with my books, one with Skittles, because I used to sell Skittles to everyone in my classroom. And then going from high school into college, I started my own iPhone repair business. My little brother had cracked his iPhone 4 for like the 10th time. And my dad pretty much decided he wasn't going to fix it. So I went on YouTube. Took me about 6 hours, and after taking it apart and put it all the way back together, I was completely shocked that it worked. But being an entrepreneur, I realized, I might have an opportunity here, considering Amazon at the time, this is before Prime even came out. I think they were selling screens in between $25 and $30. And then if you went to the mall, they were fixing phones for $100. I was like, I can undercut everybody and do it for $60. And it's essentially how I fed my way through college. But at the same time, I went to a small school called Monmouth University, and they're one of the few schools in the country that actually offers a degree in business with a concentration in real estate. So at a very young age, I got exposed to cap rates, NOIs, walking the sites of massive properties, and just learning the ins and outs of the business. And the girl that I was dating at the time in college, her dad had just started a house flipping business, and he took me under his wing, and we wound up flipping about 10 houses together up in North Jersey. And I kind of got to really get that hands-on experience of, I was knocking down doors, I was handwriting the direct mail letters. I would actually then go and place the letters inside the people's doors, because you can't put it in their mailboxes. Going to the courthouse, checking out the auctions and stuff like that. And it was an unreal experience at such a young age. And right around my senior year, me and that guy's daughter, we'd wind up breaking up. So that whole relationship kind of ended on the house flipping side of things. But it was amazing to kind of get that experience. Back to like kind of football. So as a college football player, I actually was a bench player. I rode the bench. I warmed the bench for 3 years and didn't even get my first catch until my senior year of college. And it was after my senior year is when I went away on that missionary trip that I was just telling you about. And kind of coming back from that missionary trip is what really changed everything for me mentally, what really put everything in perspective for me, and really realizing that I was ready to, sacrifice who I was for who I wanted to be. At the time, my little brother had went to the NFL himself, and I had got to experience watching him. I had visited him while I was still in college. He was playing for the Oakland Raiders. And when I was flying out to Oakland, he had gotten traded from the Raiders to the Buffalo Bills. So I landed at 4 p.m. and he had to be on a flight at 9 p.m. But the critical mistake that he made was he was still locked in on a lease out in San Francisco, paying $3,000 a month for another 6 months. So I realized, damn, like he's just lost $18,000 like straight to air. And I thought, I'm moving to the NFL. I can't have that thing happen to me. And when I started training, for the league, I'm sure a lot of you guys here have heard of the platform called Bigger Pockets. So it was back in 2015, 2016 is when I first found out about them. Really, really dove deep into their podcast and really got attracted to the house hacking strategy. And when I was playing for the Arizona Cardinals out in Phoenix, I was paying $2,000 a month, living in a month-to-month apartment in case I got cut, like my brother, and quickly and surely realized that, damn, I'm going to pay $24,000 this year. That's just poof, going to go straight to air. And it was at that time where I put out a post on the Bigger Pockets, like new member introduction forum, introducing myself. My name's Hakeem Valles, tight end for the Arizona Cardinals, looking to network and meet other investors who've house hacked or who've interested in smaller multifamilies in the Phoenix area. And 30 to 40 people responded to that message and took them all out to coffee, took them to lunch, walked the sites of their properties, and got to meet like a realtor investor who really knew the ins and outs, and he held my hand throughout the process. And essentially, my rookie year, I bought a $268,000 fourplex utilizing my FHA loan. So I only had to put down $13,000 and lived in one unit, rented out the other three, and was able to live for free while I was playing. My teammates thought I was insane, while they lived in their mansions and super nice condos out in Scottsdale and Paradise Valley. And while I was living with, a Section 8 tenant in one of my units. And it was an awesome, awesome learning experience, kind of, really being in the dirt and, playing in the NFL at the same time. And quickly and surely, I got cut from the Cardinals about 7 months after I purchased that property. And with FHA loans, you technically have to live in that property for a year. And as a kind of a loophole around it, I Airbnb'd the unit I was living in and went to the Detroit Lions. And when I got to Detroit, did the same exact thing with a duplex, lived downstairs, we Airbnb'd upstairs so we could live for free. And while I was in Michigan is when I actually got involved on the real estate side of the cannabis industry. So we bought 40 acres in Michigan, hedging that cannabis was going to go recreational in November of 2018. So we bought it in April 2018. So we bought the land for $500,000. And when cannabis went rec in November, we got an offer for $7 million. And instead of cashing out, that was when we made the strategic decision that we had all the leverage because we owned the land. And for the last year and a half, 2 years, we've been, interviewing and sitting down with some of the country's top cultivators to enter strategic relationships to develop out the plots of land on our land. And then back to like playing in the NFL in August of 2018, I have a 1-year-old daughter now, 1.5, about to be 2-year-old daughter now. And after having her is what really put things in perspective for me. Because at the core, I'm an entrepreneur, football player. I just happen to be good at it. But I couldn't be the investor that I wanted to be. I couldn't be the dad I wanted to be and play in the NFL at the same time. So come February of 2019, I made the decision to walk away from the NFL and just double down on myself in real estate and just being an entrepreneur. Quickly after retiring, I closed on a smaller 7-unit apartment building out in Des Moines, Iowa, where we raised some passive capital on purchasing that piece of property. And as the years kind of transgressed and kind of getting to where I'm at now in that sense is one thing I've always prided myself on, and one thing I've always realized that I'm pretty good at after walking away from the game is media and attention. One thing that I regret when I was playing in the NFL is that I was extremely insecure and I didn't post content. I didn't post my truths. I didn't talk about what I was actually doing. The type of stuff that you'd see on my social media presence was, look at me, I'm with Larry Fitzgerald. Look at me, I'm with this guy. Look at me, I got a football in the hand. Look at me, I'm playing at Lambeau Field or something of that sort. Versus actually telling my truths and putting out content at scale. Because one thing that I've realized, and one thing I think a lot of people are realizing now, especially with this coronavirus madness happening right now, is that media is important, and like the digital side of things is extremely important. And I think especially in a 2020 world, and especially with COVID going on, a lot of companies are realizing that without having a digital footprint, that essentially they're becoming irrelevant. And the thing that a lot of these companies aren't able to do is essentially communicate on all these platforms that are provided to us. So kind of as I went along after retiring from the NFL, I decided that I'm going to double down, triple down on these media platforms. So one of the greatest things that I did, and probably my greatest piece of advice to everyone in here, the 65 people in here, is posting on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a hidden place for a lot of people that are in the real estate space. It's a platform that we tend to ignore. LinkedIn, in my opinion, because of the organic reach that is allowed on that platform, you have the ability to meet new people and essentially scale your network in ways that you can't on any other platform. And the mindset of a person who's on LinkedIn is in a business type of mindset versus being on Facebook, versus being on Instagram, versus being on a platform like TikTok. Perfect example, my very first post that I put on LinkedIn was this very short clip of me talking about how I bought my first fourplex. It was a 1-minute clip just talking about the FHA loan, how you can put as little as 3.5% down on a single family duplex, triplex, or fourplex. And at the time, I had what is equivalent of 300 followers, like that would be on Instagram or Facebook or anything of that sort. So it was 300 connections. And that video got 55,000 views on it. And how something like that happens is how organic reach works is if anyone in this group right now posts their first piece of content and I tend to like it, or anyone in their following likes it, the way LinkedIn works as a platform is that every single one of their followers now gets to see that content. So if the content is good, at the end of the day, the quality is subjective. Right now, I'm in a garage because I just moved. But at the end of the day, it's the message that really matters. But I really had to get that off my chest because a lot of people ignore LinkedIn. A lot of people think of LinkedIn because of what it was 3 years ago, essentially a resume platform and a place to go, give your friend a recommendation or what's the thing you can do to people? I can't remember what the other thing is that you can do to people. But right now, LinkedIn is what Facebook was 10 years ago. And if you're a real estate investor, or if you're an aspiring real estate investor or beginner real estate investor, it's a place to go and network your face off. And especially right now, at a time where everyone's at home, everyone's on their computer, everyone's on their phone, it's the time to be out there and actually meeting people at scale. And like a tactical piece of advice that I do on LinkedIn that I haven't seen anyone else do yet, but I probably have a 80 to 90% response rate when I do it, is when I connect with someone on LinkedIn, instead of sending, if people in here have LinkedIn, I'm sure you guys are starting to recognize the same copy and paste messages that everyone sends on that platform. I think a way to break that pattern recognition is essentially to send a very short 10-second video to anyone that you connect with on LinkedIn. If you plan on actually doing business and being about action on this platform, and you're not just about the vanity metrics of how many followers and connections I have, and you actually want to make stuff happen, you might as well turn your new cold contacts into warm contacts by sending them a very short 10-second video saying something as simple as, hey, Hakeem, super happy to be connected with you. Hope my content can bring you some value along the way. Is there anything you ever need from me? Don't hesitate to reach out. Hope your family's doing well with all this coronavirus madness. Have a great day. And do that at scale. Everyone right now in the 2020 world is trying to put their pitch in their first 5 seconds instead of, one, just being a human and having the human interaction, but then two, not going for the right hook during the first second, not going for the kiss in the first 10 seconds when you just meet someone at the bar. Instead, there's got to be some sort of romance in that sense. But instead of sending the typical message, break that pattern recognition by sending a video. It'll make that person's day. The responses I get are honestly unreal on a daily basis. But then after they respond, that's when you can kind of engage in some type of genuine business conversation or what type of value or whatever you have to provide for them. But it's a way to really, really break the patterns of the people that you're trying to reach and the people that you're trying to connect with along the way. And like from a content standpoint, like my best piece of advice and kind of and I'll get into what my company does and how we kind of provide value and how we help. My biggest piece of advice for anyone right now, whether you're an expert, whether you're an intermediate, whether you're a beginner, especially in real estate, is starting a podcast. Starting a podcast in a 2020 world is so important, mainly because, well, first off, before I even get into podcasting, we've never had this opportunity before. 10 years ago, if we wanted to do what we can do now from our cell phones, we'd have to pay $3.5 million to launch a satellite up into space so we could then have our own news program and broadcast our propaganda to the world. Where now we can do that right from our phone. If we wanted to essentially have a radio station and do whatever we wanted from that sense, we can do that with a podcast. If you wanted to be a newspaper, you'd have to, first of all, buy a printing press or something of that sort. But now in 2020, you can just write a blog. So where I'm going with podcasts and why I think they're so important and why real estate professionals, real estate investors can value from it extremely is essentially from a networking standpoint. Perfect example. If you wanted to meet your favorite rock star in real estate in St. Louis and you send them a cold email or you send them a Facebook message or you send them a LinkedIn message saying, hey, rock star, super happy, would love to take you out to coffee to pick your brain on all the cool projects that you're working on. You're going to get like a 1 in 30 response rate on that person because Rockstar doesn't really care about you in that sense. Rockstar's got his own stuff going on and essentially is stuck on his high horse. The thing about having a podcast is that it flips the script when it comes to leverage. Meaning you send that same message to that rock star saying, hey, Mr. Rockstar, love what you're doing, love the portfolio you've built out here in the St. Louis market, would love to have you come on my show and come and tell your story about what you've done and what you've built of all this time. It completely hits a different endorphin in that person's brain because everyone, doesn't matter who you are, everyone has a story and no one's listening. And when you're the person who provides that platform for someone to tell their story on, they'll love you forever. It's a complete leverage. It's a complete leverage flip. Whereas if you were at Starbucks picking that person's brain, you're the beta, that person you're talking to is the alpha. Where you flip the script and you're the person who's hosting the party, you have all the leverage. And by providing that platform, essentially, I wouldn't say you could do whatever you want with those people in the future, but now you have a warm community of people who you can work with, who you can provide referrals to, who you can do deals with, anything of that sort. And from my perspective, in a real estate sense, most people put, from a podcast perspective of what do I say? Like, what would I ask? What do I do on that show? And from my opinion, especially if you're new, you ask the questions that you want to know anyway. We all have millions of questions. And if you've got the opportunity to sit down with someone that you want to work with or someone you want to be like someday, you've got a million questions to ask those people. And essentially, those are the questions that you ask at scale to those people. And now when you're doing it in a very hyper-focused area like a St. Louis, the beauty of having a podcast on the back end, especially after this coronavirus madness ends, is that now the power of having these people in your network is that you can continue to become a thought leader by continuing to keep everyone warm in that network. How to do that is by hosting meetup events. If I had a localized St. Louis, I have a localized St. Louis podcast. It's called the St. Louis Small Business Podcast, where I interview small business owners. But what I do and what you guys could do, if whether it's St. Louis or any other market across the country, is essentially every 10 episodes, you reinvite those 10 guests that you just had on your show back for a little cocktail happy hour talking about X, or invite the guy from episode 3 is a genius when it comes to raising capital. So you have him talk for 15 minutes talking about X, Y, and Z. But all of that type of stuff can be cultivated all from the podcast. because you have this network that you're building. You get to episode 20, you invite all 20 guests back. You get to episode 30, you invite all 30 guests back. And you continue to scale that way. And especially if you're a beginner, you don't know anything. You don't have to act like you know anything. A lot of people think that because I have a podcast, I have to now posture and peacock and act like I'm someone who I'm not and fake it till you make it in that sense. If you essentially approach this with authenticity and humility, as I'm Johnny, I don't know anything, and I'm looking to learn as much as possible, it's called the high school party rule. So hear me out for a second. Back in high school, there was someone who was, I'd say, a C amongst popularity in your entire friend group. And come junior, senior year, that person had the luxury of their parents going away on the weekends. So what did they do? They hosted the party. All the popular kids came, the A's came to hook up, to drink, to do all that stuff. And slowly but surely, by the time graduation came around, that kid went from a C to an A. That's the high school party rule. And essentially, it's the same exact thing you can do with a podcast to essentially build your thought leadership, to build your credibility, to build your network in any facet of business. Like real estate is just perfect because I'm an investor and I think it's an amazing way to grow. It's just the ultimate way to essentially hack your way to where you want to go, because by facilitating and distributing that content and having these thought leaders come on your show, that's essentially the way to build your own credibility and build your own brand. And like the number one issue that I think real estate professionals have, because if you look around in your network of people, the type of content that real estate professionals put out on their Facebook, their Instagram, their LinkedIn, it's super vanilla. It's super vanilla. And I think the way for it to get way better is that a lot of people put podcasts, so a 30-minute, 15-minute, 25-minute, 45-minute interview, they put that interview on a pedestal. Meaning a lot of people have too much audacity to think that, oh, just because I dropped the podcast, that everyone's, because I just put on my Facebook, hey guys, link in bio, go check out my next episode, that everyone's just gonna check it out magically. And I think that people have too much audacity because you're creating too much friction for someone. If they're on Facebook scrolling, looking at their sister's kids, looking at what this person's doing during quarantine, looking at this thing, and then all of a sudden they see Bill's post of, hey guys, new episode out, check out my new interview. Like, people have too much audacity to think that because Bill said, check out my interview, that now while I'm looking at my sister's kids on my timeline, that I'm gonna now take out my headphones, sit down for 45 minutes and now listen to your episode. That just doesn't happen. That's not how humans are wired. So where I think that the true value of a podcast is also the micro content that can be derived from every episode. Meaning, if I had Bill on my podcast, when I asked Bill, hey Bill, tell me the different ways on how you've navigated the St. Louis real estate market. And Bill answers for 3 minutes. That 3-minute answer is what I would put on my Facebook. That 3-minute answer is what I put on my LinkedIn. That 3-minute answer is what I put on my Facebook. If I like to write, that 3-minute answer, I then take a summary of it and write a small blog post on it. It's a way to essentially, one, put out no friction to your audience, but then two, put no friction on yourself when it comes to creating content. We all know the weird feeling that we all get in our stomach when we think, oh man, I got to create content, so I got to put a camera in my face and blah, 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 blah. Like, everyone knows that cringy feeling. Whereas if you flip the script and essentially you're documenting what you've already been doing. I think a podcast, sitting down on a podcast, is no different than going to Starbucks and picking someone's brain. There's just a camera on you. And now, what more of a perfect time to do it during coronavirus, during COVID? Like obviously, if there's things going on with your family, like me personally, like my grandma right now has coronavirus, and thank God she's overcoming her flu right now, which is awesome. But I think if you have the luxury of not having a family member affected by this, if you have the luxury of being still clear-headed and not, dealing with the anxiety that naturally comes with this, dealing with the stress, dealing with the money issues, dealing with babysitters and kids, God forbid if you don't have any of that, now is the time to be playing on offense. A lot of people are going to defense right now because they're scared. A lot of people are trying to win the game 7-0. Whereas if you just continue to stay on offense, you can win the game 104-97. And I think from a stay on office standpoint, thinking of podcasts, thinking of them right now, everyone's home. There's no excuse for anyone nowadays. And the beauty of a podcast, it can be done all on your computer. It can be done all on your phone if need be. Zoom, or not this isn't Zoom, this is GoToMeeting, but Zoom is a perfect example. Zoom allows you to screen record conversations, boom, 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 and you can record episodes at scale. Because I think now it's the perfect time. And I think like from a media standpoint, like people aren't taking media and the digital side of things seriously. Like I think the digital side of things needs to be taken as serious, if not more serious, than when you guys used to balance your checkbooks. How important that was, how life or death balancing your checkbook was. I think if you don't know how to communicate on the 5 to 7 platforms where everyone is communicating right now in a 2020 world, you will ultimately become irrelevant. And I think from a real estate standpoint, the thing about podcasting, it's a way to, one, put yourself in the conversation. Two, during a coronavirus COVID era where there's no networking events going on unless you made an awesome pivot like the Southside Investment Club. Because I mean, this is unreal. I mean, how many other meetup groups have said, screw it, we'll just meet up whenever this whole thing ends? Like, honestly, kudos to this group because this is unreal that there's this many people here. I think that like from a what was I saying? Kudos, blah, blah, blah. From a staying on offense standpoint and from a podcasting standpoint, like this is the ultimate opportunity for you, like as an investor, especially if you're newer, to really solidify yourself in the space. Because right now, like, Craig was mentioning, like right now is the time everyone has to be patient. Like I said at the beginning, you're hearing a lot of emotional, opinion-based headlines being put out there by some of the big time real estate investors of, oh, real estate's fine, or oh, everything is great, or everything is awful, sell all your stuff. Like, I think now is the time to wait and pause. But I think during that time you're waiting and pausing is a great time to stay on offense. And the way to stay on offense is creating some type of interview-based show where, one, you're learning more and more and more at scale about the industry just by tapping into different conversations of, what are you seeing? What are you seeing? What type of pivots are you making with your stuff? And then now you facilitating and then distributing the content from those interviews allows you to essentially become a thought leader in that space. So a little bit about me and my media company. So I back in October, I founded a media company called Perspective Global Media. And being a real estate investor, I realized the value and the importance of attention and the importance of communication. And then looking from a bird's eye view, being in the industry for 8 years, realizing how vanilla the content that was coming out of this industry. And then on top of that, realizing that I'm actually pretty good at this. And I never knew I was creative until about a year ago. And actually then double downing and then building a team around myself and then creating this company. But essentially, I'm gonna actually share my screen for a second because I love setting the framework for Q&A. So definitely start to get your questions in the queue, because I think one thing I have the innate ability to do is to go deep on some of your personal branded and content related questions. And then just off of my own individual experience in the real estate space, I just have a different, unique perspective on a couple of different things. But I'm going to share my screen for a second to show you essentially with our company. We're a global media agency. In the big picture, before coronavirus hit, our core strategy is essentially helping different real estate professionals, businesses, small businesses, professional athletes with the strategy side of creating content. And then we also handle the post-production of that content at scale. We have an entire in-house post-production team. Now with coronavirus going on and with everyone staying home and with the insensitivity of some small businesses, considering where their budgets have gone, considering what's happening from a payroll perspective and things like that, I think it's insensitive to do outreach and things like that from that standpoint. But what we've created is a 90-day momentum turnkey podcast product. I'm going to share my screen to kind of show you what that looks like with what those. Can you guys see my screen here? It's my first time on this platform.
Yes.
Okay, cool, awesome. So essentially, I'm going to show you this, and I'm going to show you how we can get, like, how if anyone wanted to set up a phone call moving forward, I'll kind of show you that. But essentially, what it is, it's a 90-day product where the first 30 days is purely just brand discovery, where we're figuring out you, figuring out who your avatar audience is, and how to figure out, how to structure your episode, and put together a CRM so you can get your all of your guests organized, and so you can continue to follow up along the way. And then the second 30 days is launching your first 2 episodes. Our company creating micro content on the back end, and then continuing up with those strategy and messaging calls. And then the final 30 days is actually honing your message, doing 2 more episodes, creating that micro content from those episodes, and then more strategy calls. And then moving forward from there, we have options to continue to work with us after 90 days on a monthly basis. But from there, if anyone essentially is interested in learning more about this, learning about the price about this, and just honestly wanting to talk about, I'm thinking about getting into media and strategy and the digital side of things. Essentially how you do that is, so here's our website, it's perspectiveglobalmedia.com. And when you scroll down to the bottom of our website, there's a section that looks just like this. It says, who is Hakeem Valles? Small short bio. And when you click on this link for set up a phone call, it's as simple as this. I'm sure you guys have all seen the calendar apps, but when you guys go and pick a time to set up a call, when you get to the bottom where it says, how did you hear about us? Just be sure to put SSIC for Southside Investment Club, just so I can keep track and know where you guys came from. And let me see. Yeah, so when you're on that site, perspectiveglobalmedia.com, and when I'm gonna actually put it in the chat so I can drop. This is the actual that link I just put into the chat will take you directly to that booking page, so you don't have to go directly straight to the website. And I just saw Lori ask, is the call free? Yes, 150%. The call is free. It's organized right up to my Google Calendar. Willing to take as many calls as possible to, like, whether it's you guys working with me as a client, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know to get your podcast started. Only thing my company is going to do is help you do it faster. Like, I could care less about being being a gatekeeper and hiding all the secrets on how to get started in that sense. I'll tell you essentially everything what you want to do, but what we're going to do is help you actually get started and be that accountability person on your shoulder. Because what I've seen is most people get started with their podcast, and then they get to episode 3, episode 2, don't get any traction, and essentially quit. Let me go back. I have no idea how to get back to seeing everybody again.
Hey, Hakeem, was that kind of a dig at me? Because I have a podcast called REI Rockstar Podcast, and admittedly, it's been a while. It's been a minute since I've had a I've had a podcast going. So was that a dig at me?
It wasn't a dig at you. No, the Rockstar comment though was, because I have no idea how to go back to video. How do I? Oh, here, people can see my screen.
But no, I did let him know that we had one, but we've been focusing on other things.
Yeah.
I'm just joking.
I'm gonna take off this screen record. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I don't know how to not share my screen. I'm so sorry for the delay.
Should be at the bottom. There's a mic, camera, screen, and leave.
Oh, okay. I see this. Got you.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay, cool. No, but I was using, when I said, I think I said Mr. Rockstar. I said that because I saw that your podcast was the Rockstar podcast. But no,
Right,
that
yeah.
definitely wasn't a thing at you. But I do. It just happens. People get started with a podcast and it just turns into back of mind. And my opinion, podcasts are extremely important. Anyone that you want to reach out to, instead of message them and reaching out to them because you're nervous that they're going to respond or not, just ask them to come on your show. You got a 10 times more of a better chance of talking to that person. Use the show to build the rapport that you were going to build anyway when you have a conversation at Starbucks or just over Zoom. And then after the show is when you're in the weeds doing the hand-to-hand combat, trying to figure out how we can do business together. You realize, oh, the guy from episode 1 raises capital. Then the guy from episode 3, he's a big-time developer and needs capital. And you being that person in the middle of connecting the guy from episode 1 to episode 3, that's your value proposition. Especially if you don't know where to get started, instead of going from a position of just dwelling like, oh my God, coronavirus and blah, blah, blah. It's a way to go on offense and just make things happen, make opportunities happen versus just waiting for them to come to you. Was there any questions? I don't even know, how do I see the questions? Should I just go right down, like from just one person just asked, where do I do business? I do business everywhere. We're a virtual company. We have employees from Baltimore to St. Louis to the Philippines to Los Angeles. So we're a virtual company. I do a lot of business in Detroit, so I spend a lot of time essentially wherever my clients are. But yeah, and somebody just asked, where do I live? I live right in O'Fallon, Missouri. Moved here after having a 1-year-old. The mother of my child, she moved out here, and it just makes it 10 times easier because I'm on the road probably once a week, just being closer to my daughter. But is there any more questions? If so, if not, it's all good. But I'd love to kind of go deep if anybody has anything. But if not, the best way to reach out to me is picking the time from that link, so we can set up a call and kind of figure out if a podcast is for you, kind of the steps it takes to kind of get it done and executed, and take it from there.
Yeah, guys, if you have any questions for Hakeem, for sure, type that in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to it. In the meantime, it's funny you say how important media is, and look how important the whether I'm trying to say this without sounding like conspiracy theory kind of person, but look how much damage the coronavirus has done to our psyche just because the media said how bad this was going to be, right? And people, it comes back in media time and time again. People are attracted to the truth. What I like about you is just the truth, right? This is how it is. This is how it needs to be done. This is why it's important. This is why this is relevant. Blah blah blah. That's a truth that is, that people are attracted to. So look at what, whether can you really trust the mainstream media? Not just talking, the media that you're talking about, social media and all that kind of stuff. But are they perpetuating truth or are they perpetuating fear? And that's why I listen to podcasts. I listen to YouTube videos. I listen to that kind of stuff, not for my news, but just because I like that stuff because people speak the truth there. Social media, people speak the truth there. People don't necessarily speak the truth on news stuff and things like that. So I know, I don't know if this is maybe more of a statement than a question, but people are just so hungry for the truth. People want to be told the truth, not lies.
100%. I think to tap into just the mainstream media, I think everyone should understand this statement that whenever there's a coup in a country, any type of terrorist group, something is overthrowing a government, the very first place that group goes to is the news station. They hijack everybody, they kidnap everybody, then they broadcast their propaganda because media is essentially that important. But from a sense of people looking for that authenticity, I think it's real. I think my ultimate thesis is that everyone, human beings, we're all inherently special. Just most of us are too insecure to show the truth, show the real, show the insecurity, show the flaws, talk about the L's, talk about the time you lost all this capital on this deal, but then you settled everybody and made everything even. Talk about the time where you just had a solid L on a deal and you just lost money. Most people are too scared when things like that happen. They go into the corner and hide versus instead of just owning your L's. Like they call it I don't know if anyone in here has seen the movie 8 Mile. They call it the 8 Mile rule. When Eminem does the rap battle at the end, he just makes fun of himself the entire time. And then he wins the battle because you can't say anything about him because he's just being truthful and authentic. Okay, I got a couple questions in here. Frank asked, how often do you recommend broadcasting a podcast? My thought is that is honestly as much as you can. I think it's be self-aware. I compare a podcast to, it's no different than having a Zoom conversation or having a phone conversation. It's just put on a pedestal in that sense, and documenting that content, especially right now during coronavirus. Nobody cares what the quality looks like. It's what is your message? Are you asking the right triggering questions to your guests so they can now bring value to your audience in that sense? Matt Choi asked, what are some of your tips for LinkedIn content for a real estate investor? I think it's multifaceted. My favorite thing is just document, don't create, just show the real you, meaning everything that you do every day as a real estate investor. Our lives are insane, like just wildly insane. I think even just being home, not even being able to be out in the field, our lives are still insane, considering the phone calls we're making, considering all the lists that we're scrubbing, considering the properties that we're underwriting and all that type of stuff. I think documenting the real and broadcasting that is the type of content. Or if you actually happen to be a subject matter expert in something and you're not a beginner, there's a website called Quora, Quora, and essentially it's a massive database of questions. And if you are a subject matter expert on cost segregation, or if you're a subject matter expert on raising capital, or if you're a subject matter expert on property management, if you type in those phrases, hundreds of thousands of questions pop up. And I think a great idea for making content, especially while you're at home, is literally picking a question, answering it. Literally, how do you raise capital? I think you should raise capital by blah, 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 blah. And if you go to my social profiles, I have a whole bunch of videos that just show you how to even make that simple content of, here's a question, here's my answer. Here's a question, and like doing that twice a day, 3 times a day, it's simple. Like, if you know it, do it. If you don't know it and you're trying to fake it till you make it, you're gonna look crazy and you're gonna look insane while you're trying to do something like that. But if you're being truthful, because you have raised capital, because you have managed the property, because you have done a 1031 exchange and you want to talk about 1030, like, that's the type of content I'd be putting out on LinkedIn. And then the second type of content would be the micro content that I would extract from my podcast episodes. So if I just interviewed anybody on Frank on the show or Matt on the show, I would take a clip from our interview and post it when Matt's talking about how he bought this property in St. Louis. And I own the IP of it, so it's my content, and now people are coming to my page to hear more, figure out what's next, and in that sense. Susan Duff asked, how long have you been networking on LinkedIn? What is the most unexpected connection you've made through LinkedIn? Or have you ever made a real estate deal because of networking on LinkedIn? I haven't, but I've made a cannabis deal on LinkedIn from networking. So I'm involved in the Massachusetts cannabis space because of it. And it started with that first post I put on LinkedIn that I told you about when I bought my fourplex. That video got 55,000 views, but from those 55,000 views, I got 3 paid speaking engagements from it. I got invited to be a guest on about 15 different real estate podcasts. I had 3 different people who had over $100,000 in passive money that had a 1031 exchange coming up within the next 30 days and needed to park that money somewhere, but I didn't have a deal. So I was like, God damn it, let me just take down your information, blah, 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 blah. I'll hit you up some other time. But like, so I could have done some deals, but I think a lot of people, and that's probably a good point, just because it's money, you don't need to park it in a deal. If you don't have a deal, you don't have a deal at the end of the day. And then the next post I put on LinkedIn, I got 20 views on it. The next post, I got like 70 views. The next post got 18 views. The next post got 50 views. But then the next post got 88,000 views. And the same exact thing happened again. Invited on 20 episodes of podcasts. I think like 2 people hit me up for 1031 exchange. Bunch of speaking engagements were derived from it. Then people coming from the cannabis space, because I think the next piece of content was about raising capital and just being a professional athlete. Someone reached out to me like, hey, I've got 2 vertically integrated operations that I got licenses for in Massachusetts. I don't know how to raise capital. Maybe we can partner up. And that's essentially how those types of relationships have come out. But the only way those types of things happen is by staying on offense and not waiting for stuff to happen, just broadcasting your truths at scale, and the opportunities will come. I think.
Hakeem, did you know that I got really into Hakeem, did you know that I got really into hydroponics a couple years ago?
Oh, did you really? That's awesome. Like, were you like setting up like hydroponic farms for different people for different industries, or was it solely for cannabis?
No, I don't do the pot, but I grew lettuce in my basement with my daughter, and it was a unbelievable process. And I well versed. I actually started a YouTube channel, the Hydro Nation, and I documented a lot of the stuff that I did. Um, just it was so neat to grow stuff without soil and just have water. It was really neat. It was like a science experiment in my basement. It was really cool.
That's so cool. That's mind blowing. That's awesome. One of my old teammates now, he lives in Vegas. He has a business where he helps companies, like if you grow lettuce, he'll then come to your farm and build an entire hydroponic setup so you can do it that way versus the old
That's
fashioned
awesome.
way. Schnell asks, can you speak more about a 1031 exchange and when it's appropriate to utilize? So full discretion, I've never done it, but from my own education of what a 1031 exchange is if you, so for perfect example, I was about to sell my fourplex right before this Corona madness hit. I probably had $110,000 worth of equity in it that I would have been able to, profit from. What a 1031 exchange is, and please cut me off if I'm wrong in any way, shape, or form here. I'm selling this property. I now have 60 days to identify another property that I want to essentially park the full amount of the profits or a portion of the profits in. And if I do that, I essentially don't get taxed on that money at that time. It's essentially postponing your tax event for if when you sell that next property, you're going to get taxed for selling that property and selling the fourplex. But the loophole is you can continue to 1031 exchange your entire life starting from this fourplex to when you die. And if you die, the loophole is it wipes out the taxes when you put the property in your kid's name. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's my understanding of it. It's extremely beneficial if you're playing this game in perpetuity for the long run and you don't need the immediate cash. It's a great way to just like forgo those taxes. If you're playing for cash flow and you can survive off of cash flow, in my opinion, it's the way to go. Was that a good answer?
So yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at my phone. I'm getting a lot of texts from people on the call saying that they are making fun of my my use of the term "I don't do the pot." They said it's the most dad thing that I've said in a long time, but that was meant. It was meant to be. That was my Eminem thing, making fun of myself that I'm some square
That's
guy
awesome.
that doesn't do the pot. So
That's awesome. Oh, Frank mentioned park it into an opportunity zone, and you don't have to. That's exactly right. In O-zone, it's essentially a 1031 exchange on steroids. Just make sure you work with someone who's very, very well versed on opportunity zones, because if you make the wrong mistake doing it, you might not qualify for it at the end of the day, and then you screwed yourself because you were planning on doing parking something in an opportunity or using a property in an opportunity zone, and then you weren't able to do it. I think from my end, from the questions in the queue, I think that might be everything.
cool. Well, hey, listen, Hakeem, thanks for being a part of our first virtual monthly case studies and speaker series meeting. I know we had a little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning, but I think we kind of came off without a hitch. And this is going to be for the next foreseeable future what we're going to be doing here. And for sure, I really appreciate your time here and listening to your story and listening to your take on how to get your name out there is. And your background is just really neat. So I really appreciate you being here. And we talked a lot about what we should be doing in our business at the very beginning, and then we kind of shifted and just talked about what we should be doing to expand our business and growing our business using social media. And it was nice for a little bit not to talk about coronavirus. It was nice a little bit to not talk about the pandemic and the situations out there. So it's a breath of fresh air. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Guys, thanks for being on the call here today. Thanks to Craig for being the voice of reason. Thanks to Frank for giving out a $100 gift card to this week for you do that every month, but we did it virtually this time, so that's awesome. Guys, whenever possible, visit our vendor list. At SSIC online, our vendors are the backbone of SSIC that helps us go and produce and do what we do. We really appreciate their support. And if there's any questions, comments, or concerns, just let us know or Hakeem know. Remember, if you want a one-on-one session with him and me, and or me, there's two different sessions to potentially sign up for. Both of them are free, and both of them are going to be meeting with Hakeem or me and my team to talk about what we can do to improve your business and look for the opportunities instead of focusing on the objective or on the obstacle. Guys, thanks for your participation. Hakeem, thanks again, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you for having me on, Nick, man. It was really enjoyed it. And thanks to the Southside Investment Club. You guys were awesome. This is my first time doing a virtual talk. I was freaking out. I didn't know if I was supposed to stand or sit or what I'm supposed to do with my hands, but I really enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time. Talk to you soon.